Hello, a very good evening. It's 7:05 on LBC. I'm Iain Dale. Welcome to the programme. Well, as you can probably tell, we're back from the Labour Party conference in Liverpool, back in Millbank studio. And it's going to be, I think, quite an interesting programme tonight. We have Cross Question at 8. We're going to be discussing the crisis in Iran after 9. But let's kick off with the economic crisis, because I don't think anybody can deny that it is an economic crisis at the moment. I'll give you some of my views on that a little bit later. But let's get straight into it, because I have with me in the studio the Financial Secretary to the Treasury, Conservative MP for Arundel and South Downs, Andrew Griffith. Andrew, welcome to the programme. Very good evening, and thanks for sparing the time for this. What can you say to pacify the markets, to calm the frenzy that there is throughout the City of London at the moment in the financial markets?
Look, obviously it's difficult times in the market, and that's not unique to the UK. That's something that we see in most of the developed world, as the long-term shock effects of Putin's war in Ukraine filter through, and we've seen that particularly on energy. So I think what the market is looking for is the bank to do exactly what it's done today, which is to make a timely and targeted intervention to ensure orderly financial markets, which is the job of the bank. That's done in close coordination with the Chancellor. And again, I think the markets want to and need to know that the Chancellor, the Treasury and the bank are working incredibly closely together, speaking multiple times a day to make sure that we run the economy and deliver stability at this important point in time. And then I think they need to step back a little bit and understand what the government's trying to achieve with the growth plan. And if you recall, it feels a long time ago, I know, but if you recall, what we announced on Friday was, first of all, to deal with the pressure that households, that your listeners right now, are feeling on energy. And if we hadn't taken that action on energy to freeze people's prices throughout this winter and extend that to business, then we'd be having a very different conversation,
but that
I think,
was not
about
what happened on Friday, was it? You introduced measures on Friday which the markets weren't expecting. As Margaret Thatcher once said, you can't buck the markets. The markets have, I mean, you might say they've panicked, but they might say they've reacted in the way that any market would in these circumstances, because you've spooked them.
The point I was going to make is about the three elements of the package. So, look, there's a lot of change in markets at the moment, and a lot of uncertainty that we're all having to deal with.
But haven't you
that's not unique. That's not unique. Well, that's not unique to the United Kingdom. Coming forward with that energy package was the first part of dealing with that uncertainty, because going into Friday, you'll remember there was a profound uncertainty about the impact of energy prices that we've now capped, and the impact on business. And if we hadn't done that, you and I would be having a very different conversation. The second thing, once you cast that forward, is how are we going to grow the economy? I mean, ultimately, how are we going to keep people in jobs and how they're going to be able to have the wherewithal to maintain the standard of living and the high-quality public services that we all seek. And the third part of that, which we'll hear more over the coming days and weeks, was about what they call the supply-side revolution, which is really about dealing with something that we all know, which is it just takes too long to get things done. People will be stuck in traffic jams on their way home, wondering why that bypass isn't being built, wondering why it is so hard to get childcare in this country. And there's a whole package under that growth plan of supply-side reform. So those are the three elements. Of course, there's a lot here for markets to be dealing with because of the uncertainty in other domains. The government today, working very closely with the Bank of England, who made the ultimate decisions, as is their right, have made an intervention to help one small aspect of the market. But overall, the most important thing is to understand the elements of that growth plan. It's very early days in this government. Some of the detail of that will be coming through in the coming weeks. And the most important thing is that everybody can have confidence in the economy, and accept that will take time to come through.
That's the problem, isn't it? In that the markets have lost confidence in your economic approach because you surprised them on Friday with the number of measures and some of the actual measures themselves. And it's possible to argue for each of the individual measures, but to do them all at once at the same time, and having unfunded tax cuts at a time when the economy is not doing well, that goes against all conventional economic wisdom. Now, you might say, well, that's Treasury orthodoxy, and that's what we've got to go against. But if you spook the markets in this way, that's not good. That has a very negative short-term effect on the markets?
I wouldn't say that's Treasury orthodoxy. What I would say, Ian, is that we had an imperative to act. And it's important people understand that people turn on their winter central heating on the 1st of October, this Saturday. Autumn bills would start arriving.
And if we had to do with that, you'd already announced that.
The largest part of that statement on Friday was the energy plan and extending that to business. Now, there is a lot to digest. The government is resetting its plan for growth to deal with that long-term need for our country to increase its trend rate of growth from about that 1% to about the 2.5%. And I accept. And the Chancellor is coming forward, as we said on Friday as well. He's asked the OBR to tumble their numbers, to take into account all of those elements that you talked about that couldn't have been done on the fly, but can be done now, to come back and report on the 23rd of November, which is when he will lay out, the medium term.
I mean, what could happen to the markets in that time? I mean, surely the OBR. I mean, you've done this mini budget within 3 weeks
because of that imperative to act with this new government. To act on energy.
Fine, but could you really have had enough time to prepare that extent of economic change when you haven't got the figures from the OBR? Wouldn't it have been better to wait?
Well, I think you're someone that would generally say, have a proper conversation and treat people with the truth that you can give them. Now, the reality is there's a reset. There's a desire to increase the trend rate of growth. That, of course, has multiple elements to the package. These supply-side reforms covering large domains of the economy, how we get the affordable housing that we need built, how we're going to unlock the clean energy revolution. Right? So there's lots of different chapters of that book, and they will come clear over the coming weeks. The OBR could not have had the detail of that, partly because that detail is still being come forward. We will share that with you and with Parliament over the next few weeks. The OBR will have that. They will do their work as they should do their work, and then the government will come forward. But in the meantime, the country goes into this with its balance sheet in good place. Where they've got the second lowest borrowing in the G7, and the economy, because of decisions we've taken in the past, is able to absorb.
Well, you're right. We do have the second lowest borrowing in the G7. So why are the IMF so up in arms about what your plans are? Because you would have thought that they ought to be concentrating on countries that maybe have higher rates of borrowing, but they clearly have no confidence in your strategy.
Well, look, there's lots of different organisations out there. They will have to speak for themselves. They're very respected. I have one point of difference with the IMF, which is, we did make a fiscal intervention. That was a choice that we make again. And that's because what that means, and they took issue with this, but it means that every household in the country will go to bed tonight knowing that we have capped their energy bills. Right now, the IMF
and they're facing massive mortgage rises. So what you did on energy bills is going to be cancelled out by the fact that many average householders are going to probably have double their mortgage payments by the end of the year.
And sad though this is, that interest rates are rising all across the Western world. This is not something that is unique to the UK. We're seeing this in all developed markets, some days different rates, but all markets are seeing that interest rate rise. Why are we seeing that? Ultimately, because of what has happened in Ukraine.
Yeah, absolutely. But you must admit that the package of measures that you brought forward on Friday have had an effect which I don't imagine that you predicted. I don't think you would have thought we would be sitting here on the Wednesday afterwards having this kind of conversation. So the very fact that you couldn't have predicted that shows that something has gone wrong.
And what I haven't heard, Ian, and I've tried to follow all of the narrative over the last few days very closely, I haven't heard another narrative. I haven't heard anyone say, well, what you're doing on energy is wrong. You shouldn't be intervening to help households. You shouldn't have put in place the measures to help the most vulnerable.
I think it was wrong at this time to cut the top rate of tax. And I'm somebody who believes in low taxes and a smaller state. I think it was wrong to bring forward the 1p rise in income tax. I think it was wrong to do the banker's bonus thing, which I can make intellectual arguments for all of those things. But not all together, not at the same time. I mean, it was a big bazooka that you did on Friday.
It was a very comprehensive. It was a very comprehensive set of measures to get the economy growing. And we've got to look at the counterfactual. It's easy to sit here and pick an individual element of the package. Do you think, Iain, that we should be coming forward with supply-side improvements to just make this country better, to move faster, and actually deliver things?
Who wouldn't? I mean,
but you've got to start that in a place, and we started that on Friday. We came forward with some measures. People will cherry-pick their own different versions of them. A very large part of the debate has been framed about some measures which actually make up a very small amount of the money. The two big measures in terms of helping the economy, well, one, helping the economy immediately with those energy measures, without which we would be having a very different conversation, and people will be sitting here fearful about turning on their heating as the temperatures plummeted over the weekend.
The whole concept.
And secondly, giving people, because this will help with their cost of living as well, allowing people to keep more of what they earn. That, in my book, is not a bad thing. And when you're looking at the risk in the economy,
when that money is then being taken away in mortgage rises or whatever, it's kind of counterproductive. Now, Ken Clarke told Andrew Marr earlier that he's never known a budget cause a financial crisis like this. Now, I must admit, I never have either. Rishi Sunak, in the leadership campaign, predicted all of this. He called it right. Now, Ken Clarke is saying that you should delay the 1p tax cut and delay the cut in the 45p rate just to stabilise the markets. But I imagine you're going to rule that out.
Well, the cut in the 45p rate is less than 1/20th of the amount that was included in the statement on Friday. So I just don't think we should allow that debate to be defined at the extremity. And what I think people like Ken and others should answer is, are they saying that they would not be proceeding with the energy package, which is the largest fiscal part of that? Or when we look at the risk of a potential recession, of a downturn, as well as people needing to have higher household income, which is what a tax cut across the board will do, are they saying that they wouldn't proceed with those? Now you're saying that, in fairness, that's not my view, and it's why I think it remains the right package.
No U-turn coming then?
From me, I've not heard any arguments against the fundamentals of trying to shore up demand in the economy and protecting people from the worst of energy price
increases. One final question, because I know I've gone slightly over the time. Where's the Chancellor? Where's the Prime Minister? Because surely they're the one. I mean, it's great
working incredibly hard and incredibly closely. Why
aren't they saying something
incredibly closely with the Bank of England?
That need to pacify the market, aren't they?
Well, everything that I'm saying to you, Iain, and I was very happy to come on even at short notice, is exactly what the Chancellor was saying when he and I met business leaders and leaders of financial institutions earlier today, and they were enormously reassured to hear that he's working closely with the Bank of England, that there was a high degree of coordination about the action that the Bank of England took today, and that's exactly true of our Prime Minister. Well, I'm very grateful to you for spending the time. I know you've got some important meetings to go to, so we'll let you go. We'll come to your calls in a moment, 18 minutes past 7.